What's up, everyone? Today I want to tell you about one of the best books that you can read on life advice, on improving yourself, on attaining wealth, on just how you should think, things you should avoid, how to tackle problems, life advice in general. Now, this book might come as a surprise to you. It's not very well known, but the author is a billionaire and someone I respect on many levels, not just because of the wealth he accumulated, but how he thinks, how he lives his life, how he raised his family, and on and on and on. The man's name is Charlie Munger. He's a business partner of Warren Buffett, and he wrote this splendid book. It's called Poor Charlie's Almanac. All the proceeds are actually going to charity, but that's a sideshow. The point is, this man has so many exceptional life lessons in this book on so many different areas of life, and it spans things about how to accumulate wealth to true success, to how you can actually achieve success in your career, what really matters, how to tackle problems, on and on and on. But today I want to just touch on one little bit of the book. I have it here and I will read it out to you. And he goes into depth about why these things are bad. But I just want to give you a little taste of this book, and it just goes to show how important this book is. And it will be a book that I will read hopefully at least 2 or 3 times completely, if not more, throughout my lifetime. And again, it's not a 10 out of 10 knock your socks off type of book, but it's very close to that level in my opinion. And so this is a little passage I want to read, and what he talks about before I get into it is certain human traits or tendencies or beliefs or mindsets that are not helpful and can be trained out of you. Now, he goes through a lot of these throughout the book, but in this passage he talks about a few in particular, and then he goes into examples and explanations on why they're just horrible to have. And so without further ado, what these things are envy, resentment, revenge, and self-pity. So if you're ever jealous about someone who has more money, who's better looking than you, has more friends, or you resent someone because they're annoying or they're mean to you, or I don't know how far you can stretch this because he doesn't apply all these examples, but he just says resentment. So perhaps even if this person's not someone you think is a good influence and you resent them being around you, I don't know if that's going too far. Perhaps you're probably right to remove yourself from the situation if you can, but it's not a good quality to resent them. And then revenge, this is a huge theme in Chinese fiction literature and Chinese mythology and history, where you killed my father, so I'm going to kill you. And then you end up avenging your father, but then their family now wants to avenge their father because you just killed their father, even though their father did something bad. And there's this endless cycle of bloodshed and self-pity. Self-pity. And these are things that I definitely need to work on for sure. And I'm sure you guys can work on too. So let's talk about self-pity. And he goes into depth on self-pity. And what he means by this is what I would equate to whining, moping, or playing the victim card. So this is stuff like saying, oh, my life sucks, or oh my goodness, my life is horrible, or man, that guy's so lucky, look at my horrible life. I'm just playing this victim card, whining, saying, man, I wish I had a girlfriend, or man, I wish I had that dream job, and so forth. And these are all natural human tendencies. We're not sometimes told by our parents or anyone that these are good or bad. And so I don't think it's a completely bad thing that you just born naturally tending to have these. Perhaps they served a purpose in our past. But Charlie Munger says in this book that these things are not useful at all. And he says, generally speaking, so perhaps there are exceptions, but he says, generally speaking, These are disastrous modes of thought. So I'm just going to read you a short passage of this book and take it from there. If you want to check out this book, read it yourself. It is very fascinating. Unfortunately, it's one of those books that's not very common, so it's tough to find at a public library, but you can buy it online for a decent price, $60. I mean, I think it's well worth it. So this is what's said about it. Self-pity can get pretty close to paranoia, and paranoia is one of the very hardest things to reverse. You do not want to drift into self-pity. I had a friend who carried a thick stack of linen-based cards, and when somebody would make a comment that reflected self-pity, he would slowly and portentously pull out his huge stack of cards, take the top one, and hand it to the person. The card said, "Your story has touched my heart. Never have I ever heard of anyone with as many misfortunes as you." So I guess he's saying this kind of sarcastically. This man was obviously kind of sarcastic, a bit of a troll, but he was pretty much doing that thing where, if you ever seen SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs does that little thing where he's like, "Oh, poor kid, I'm going to play you the most beautiful tragic song on the world's smallest violin." And it's like a very sarcastic way of saying, your troubles aren't that great. But let's continue on. Well, you can say that's waggery, but I suggest it can be mental hygiene. Every time you find yourself drifting into self-pity, whatever the cause, even if your child is dying from cancer, self-pity is not going to help. Just give yourself one of my friend's cards. Self-pity is always counterproductive. It's the wrong way to think. And when you avoid it, you get a great advantage over everybody else, or almost everybody else, because self-pity is a standard response. And you can train yourself out of it. So that's how the book goes, just to give you a general spin. I don't think it's a very, very difficult read. I have some books that have been forced upon me in high school that are just like weird and there's all these confusing, complicated words. This book, I think I'm not gonna lie, it's an above average read in the fact that there will be some occasional fancy words thrown in here and there, and I don't think he does it to sound fancy. It's just how he talks. And so I do think, though, this is a book that for your average person, it may be a little bit tough, maybe a little bit more than a little bit tough, but generally I think anyone can read this. It's easy read. It's kind of long, but take your time, however long it takes you, and I think it's very well worth it. And I feel like if you just start taking some of the advice in the book, it can revolutionize your world for sure. In fact, I'm going to read a little bit more of this passage and then we'll call it a day. Of course, you also want to get self-serving bias out of your mental routines. Thinking that what's good for you is good for the wider civilization and rationalizing foolish or evil conduct based on your subconscious tendency to serve yourself is a terrible way to think. And you want to drive that out of yourself because you want to be wise, not foolish, and good, not evil. You also have to allow in your own cognition and conduct for the self-serving bias out of everybody else, because most people are not going to be very successful at removing such bias. The human condition being what it is, if you don't allow for self-serving bias in the conduct of others, you are again a fool. So, okay, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it gets kinda, for the average Joe, it's kinda a little up there. But really, you could read it as slow as you can. And honestly, just because the words seem a little complicated or fancy or you don't understand them completely, that's what dictionary.com is used for. That's why you have a dictionary. It's so easy today to look things up. And I mean, if it takes you a few more seconds to go on dictionary.com and just translate it into language that you understand better, it's good. Like, this is good advice. And I'm going to translate this passage real quick to maybe um, language that maybe you could understand a little bit better. And I'm telling you, it's great advice. Don't get intimidated by how he's speaking. Again, I don't think it's ridiculously complicated compared to some of the garbage. I mean, it's not garbage, but some of the really complicated stuff out there with these fancy words. So I feel like what he basically said in this passage is, you don't want to be that selfish man who thinks, okay, whatever I do is what's best for the world. And if you can kick this out of your system, you're going to do well, because most people, almost everyone, this is just how naturally we are. We just naturally are just very selfish and self-serving. And so if you can just work on this and remove this, this can help you dramatically. And so, as you can tell, even for me, it requires some self-analyzing and rereading to really understand what he's saying. But I mean, it's fascinating stuff. So just take a look, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Let me know what you guys think about this book, if I should do another video or more about this. I mean, this is a thick book, 200, 300 pages. So let me know if you like this sort of video or you don't. Maybe I'll do another reading or passage or lesson from this book for you guys. Let me know. And I'll see you in my next video if you're subscribed. If not, hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys later.